who can run with you Gerbholz ladies. You know, it's crazy because growing up, it's such a blessing to see so many of you cousins here because I looked up to all of you in different ways. And I watched you kind of from afar because we were the little kids, you know. And you know, sometimes I learned like what not to do. but that can be valuable too. But it's like the memories that float to the surface are you know, things that I learned from you that I'm so thankful for. And so some of our family story. My parents are Dell and Ingrid Jacobson, and Ingrid was the baby of the family. And so my father and mother met at Toronto Bible College, and as would be the pattern of their lives, they met coming into a seminar late and had to sit by one another. And then also a part of their pattern of their lives was they very quickly fell in love and then began to commute together. And they drove ridiculous miles to spend time together on weekends and then like my dad was at Seattle Pacific and my mom was in Toronto to Bible college, and so they commute back and forth, and then they went up to meet her family and then down to his family and all over the place. And to this day, they will still...
He was in Seattle?
He went to Seattle Pacific University.
Back a long ways.
And so one of his road trips was, you know, back that direction. And they also had a couple of friends who would road trip with them like that. But to this day, they still would prefer to drive straight through somewhere, 20 or 24 hours away, than break it up and take more time. And somehow, you know, they haven't died doing that. And I've learned really quickly I can't follow that. But they're currently living in Redding, California. They lived for about 24 years in Fargo, North Dakota, and then hauled up everything to move to Tacoma, Washington for several years, and then came down to Simpson College. My dad worked at Simpson College, my alma mater, for about 10 years in the facilities department, and they landed down there about the time we were starting to have Caleb and Emily. And so it was a blessing, a bittersweet blessing having Mom so nearby. Dad's always been really mellow. Mom is ein Gerbholz. Okay, and so she's very strong. She's a strong woman. And
That's right.
and so funny enough, like some of my marital issues, you know, have been like trying to figure out how do I run, how do I keep up with my wife without going crazy or whatever, and yet how do I lead and love and serve her and call her to follow me in our family. So they moved down to Simpson, and we spent about, I don't know, we were there 7 years. I was doing some junior high ministry, and Pam was with me in it. And that was one of those things where I had gotten a license with the Christian and Missionary Alliance and had an interview at this, you know, larger church. It was like a church of 1,200 for a part-time college and a part-time middle school pastor. And so we went, you know, to have lunch with the pastor, and he said, hey, you know, you guys seem like a nice couple. Would you be interested in doing junior high ministry full-time instead of trying to split both? And I've never worked with middle school kids. Pam had done some teaching and things, and she'd been a part of a youth group. And actually, the way we met was we met at the Lions Redwoods Christian Conference Ground. So we're one of those camp romances there, right? So here's the funny thing, though. I remember it was a Tuesday, and I'm working on staff as a men's resident assistant to the summer multiple responsibility staff, which just meant we were doing all the ropes courses and climbing walls, and I was kind of over the guys, and you know, we have a strict no dating policy with, you know, especially people on campus. Well, it's Tuesday, and there's a group of middle school students that had landed on Sunday afternoon or Monday, and so it's Tuesday, it's midweek, and I'm hanging out down at the snack shack with a couple of my friends, and I turn and I look up through the redwoods, and there's these peals of light coming, you know, how the dust kind of reflects the light coming through the redwoods. Yeah. No, serious. I mean, this is one of those weird moments where it's like all slow motion. And I get where the movies get it, you know, but when it happens, it's weird, you know, but it's cool. So I look over over and I see her kind of walking, down the path, and she's all, oh, I can't do that. Or whatever, but so she's like walking, and then I see like there's no glimmer of light on her hand, which was good. So anyway.
It's not married.
So I flirted with her, and then the program director actually did me a favor. He hired her to be a lifeguard for this summer because she had graduated from Chico State a year early with her teaching credential, and she was trying to get hired, and she had a whole summer off, and so she just worked there, and then he put me up at the pool with her for 2 weeks on purpose. We all got, back then we were all certified for lifeguarding, and the funny thing was the whole first week she and I sat on the opposite side of the pool and we're watching.
Because you're not supposed to date. That was the rule.
So then the guy puts it together. Anyways, so I met her in July. I bought a rock in October. I took her up to Tacoma, Washington in November. Proposed to her after introducing her to my parents for the very first time. Then we drove all the way down to Walnut Creek, 11 hours, to say hello to her folks, whom I'd met several times but hadn't really talked to them much. And back then I had long hair, big goatee, looked kind of like an axe murderer. We'd get to the front door and say, hey, we're engaged. And then they haul me in the house, sit me down, and her mom lectures me for an hour about there's no way I'm going to marry her daughter until I get a full-time job with medical benefits, all of this stuff. So we started out in a rough way. But the Cruikshank clan, they have some strong women too. So anyway, so my folks, they met. We lived in Fargo, North Dakota for several years, and grew up. I went off to college, bounced around. I crammed a 4-year degree into 8, and then met Pam. And I went to the Air Force Academy for 2 years, and then took a year out to try to figure out. I had one of those years where I was doing the best I could, but I wasn't real organized. Started to slip in grades. Military academy is kind of a structured environment. I was having trouble with that. And I had 2 of my friends, my sophomore year, a group of 4 of them went out, to party, and they had a designated driver. But then one of the guys fought the designated driver, got the keys, and then said, "Are you in or not?" So he got in and he drove her over a cliff, killed 2 of my friends, and it was one of those times in life where kind of the whole bottom went out. I mean, I got chronic bronchitis, walking pneumonia. I was in the hospital for several months. I don't even remember some of that sophomore year. And miraculously, the Lord allowed me to take a year off called Stop Out. And miraculously, the Lord made a friend of mine, my roommate, stay in. Now, several weeks ago, I just rode my Triumph down to Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California to see him retire from the Air Force with 24 years of distinguished service. And he was one of those, he actually came to faith in Jesus that year, and I don't know, it's really weird, but like he worked for the Pentagon and was trying to lobby for people who he loved and he's trying to take care of. So it's interesting, he served Jesus in the military faithfully, and now he's out and he moved to Colorado Springs trying to get a job with a nonprofit. Okay, back to the family. So we have been presently living in Pacifica, California, and last 8.5 years I've been, or previously 8.5 years, I've been an associate pastor leading worship, and that was after junior high ministry. And our kids have grown up in Pacifica. About 3 years ago, our lead pastor couple took a church back in Redding, and the elders graciously asked Pam and I to step in to lead our church currently. And so we said yes, and they welcomed us to leadership, and then a week later our son went into surgery for neurological back surgery in Oakland. And so it's fun because you have those little mixtures where they say, "I've never done this," or whatever. You have to guess which things are true and which things are a lie. Or 2 truths and a lie, yeah. So I've done this, but I've never done that. So one of his phrases is, I was stabbed in the back in Oakland, which is true. Surgery. Anyway, so he had a tethered spinal cord, and it was showing symptomatically in his body. And so our choice was either take this risk of surgery or take a risk of symptoms getting worse and becoming permanent. And so fearfully, we allowed the surgery, and Caleb hates it when I talk about it, so I'll make it brief. But I'm so proud of my boy and my daughter. I mean, she had to suffer silently through, next to, and not be a part of things as much. And my wife was there many days, with him. But he's been so courageous because he's had 2 follow-up surgeries since that in his right foot and ankle. And they haven't had great outcomes, But he still continues to blaze. He loves people. And he's quick to notice people who, are hurting. And he's amazing. He missed 84 days of school this last year. 88. And he's still, he didn't get a D. I mean, he still did incredibly well academically. 1 C. Okay, yeah. So he, ever since he was a little kid, he could build these really cool 3-dimensional Lego things. I remember grabbing a Lego and calling that a plane. Yeah. He would just do 3-dimensional StarCraft things. Anyways, so I'm so glad. He was baptized several years ago. He's been following Jesus and loving God in his Christian school and suffering for it. But I'm super proud of him. And Emily, she's been amazing. I mean, in some ways, they're very opposite, and they don't kill each other, so I'm really happy. So Caleb loves working with his hands and would rather not have to study and things. Emily loves to study and has worked several years ahead in mathematics, and she grew really fast, 5 or 6 inches in the recent year, and so she stepped into volleyball and basketball, and the high school coach for basketball spoke to us right after her 7th grade, a couple of games, and said, hey, I want to spend about 10 sessions with her, one-on-one. You don't have to pay me anything, but I just want her to learn some power forward moves. So she had the opportunity, but couldn't very often, to practice with some high school varsity team practices this year. So she's been enjoying sports in school, playing a little bit of flute. My wife has been super busy. It was her dream since she was about the 8th grade to be a pastor's wife. And it was just one of those things that she kind of laid out to the Lord and said, okay, well, I can't really make that happen. So, and it was nuts because when that same week that I met her and was flirting with her, I invited her to go out to Lake Shasta with a couple friends and I to do some water skiing. Little did I know that she grew up on Clear Lake water skiing. And so here's the thing, we get out in this really nice ski nautique boat, and they're asking, who'd like to try to ski? And I said, well, of course. And back then I was half the man I am now, but still I had to, I got this little ski, I get out there, I go hit it, I can't hold on, I hold on and I'm shamu with the fishing lure, big walls of water, I can't do a darn thing. And the good thing was I come out of the water totally humiliated, and I sit down and she doesn't just say a thing. She was really gentle, which I was so glad for. Because I was just oh, that's the worst. And then they go, well, so would anybody else like to ski before we wrap it up? And she's like, well, okay, yeah, I'll try it. And so she goes, hit it, and she's like, out of there, she, boom, loose her tails all over the place. Anyway, so I've spent most of my marriage running to keep up with her, and she's dragged me into way more fun than I deserve. So, and then honestly, the reason my kids are so adorable and wonderful is largely due to her, because she's chosen to stay home with them and love them. So,